Hello and welcome to English Matura with JB. I'm your host, Jane, and today we're diving into the fascinating world of second language acquisition. With me is Dr. Mark Smith, an expert in linguistics. Welcome, Mark!
Thanks for having me, Jane. I'm excited to be here and share some insights on how people learn languages.
So, Mark, let's start with something intriguing. I recently read about a Hungarian polyglot named Kató Lomb, who apparently mastered 17 languages. That's incredible. What can we learn from her?
Kató Lomb is indeed a remarkable figure. Her story highlights that language acquisition is possible even without extensive resources or constant interaction with native speakers. She acquired most of her languages in Hungary, relying heavily on reading.
Reading, huh? So she just picked up a book and started learning? That sounds surprisingly simple. Was there anything special about how she approached it?
Well, she used what she called the core novel method. She'd choose one novel in the target language and read it very thoroughly. She preferred novels over textbooks because she found the language in textbooks to be artificial. She started with Galsworthy in English, even though it was challenging.
Interesting. So it's about immersing yourself in real language, even if it's difficult at first. Did she ever get discouraged by not understanding everything?
Absolutely, but she had a strategy for that too. She wouldn't look up every single word she didn't know. She'd only check the dictionary if a word appeared 3 times and she still couldn't figure it out from context. Sometimes, she wouldn't even look it up then. The idea was to focus on understanding the overall meaning.
That's a great tip. I think a lot of learners get bogged down in trying to understand every single word, and it can be really discouraging. So, what about grammar? Was she a grammar whiz?
Interestingly, yes, she was very interested in grammar. She enjoyed figuring out grammar rules inductively, like solving a puzzle. However, she didn't believe that excessive grammar study was the key to language acquisition. She felt it played a peripheral role.
Peripheral, huh? So, it's more about exposure and understanding than memorizing rules? That's a relief to hear.
Exactly. She even quoted Langenscheidt, saying, "Die Grammatik kommt aus der Sprache, nicht die Sprache aus der Grammatik." Knowing grammar is a result of knowing the language, not the other way around.
That makes a lot of sense. So, what other insights did Kató Lomb have about language learning?
She was a big advocate for creating a positive learning environment. She believed that error correction could have negative effects and make language acquisition more difficult. She even recalled a time when she was corrected harshly and felt completely lost afterward.
Ouch, that sounds painful. So, it's better to focus on encouragement and creating a comfortable space for learners to experiment with the language?
Precisely. Now, this aligns with Stephen Krashen's theories on second language acquisition. Krashen emphasizes the importance of comprehensible input. That is, language that you can understand, even if you don't know every single word.
Comprehensible input. I've heard that term before. So, it's about finding material that's just a little bit above your current level?
Exactly. Krashen calls it I+1. The I represents your current level, and the +1 represents the next step in your language development. By exposing yourself to I+1 input, you're constantly learning and expanding your knowledge.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does Krashen's theory break down the process of language acquisition?
Krashen's theory has 5 main hypotheses. The first is the acquisition-learning distinction. He argues that there are 2 separate ways we develop language skills. Acquisition, which is a subconscious process similar to how children learn their first language, and learning, which is conscious knowledge about the rules of the language.
So acquisition is like picking up a language naturally, while learning is like studying grammar in a classroom?
Precisely. And Krashen believes that acquisition is far more important than learning for fluency. The second hypothesis is the monitor hypothesis, which explains how learning influences acquisition. According to Krashen, the acquired system initiates our utterances, while the learned system acts as a monitor or editor, correcting our speech.
So the learned system is like a little grammar checker in our heads?
In a way, yes. But Krashen suggests that we shouldn't rely on it too much. Overusing the monitor can lead to hesitation and a lack of fluency. He also talks about the natural order hypothesis, which suggests that we acquire grammatical structures in a predictable order, regardless of our age or background.
That's interesting. So, there's a natural sequence to language learning?
Yes. But Krashen doesn't recommend basing language programs on this order. He believes that focusing on comprehensible input is more effective than trying to follow a specific grammatical sequence. And that brings us to the input hypothesis, which we already touched upon. It's all about receiving input that's just a little bit beyond your current level.
Right, the I+1 principle. So, what's the fifth hypothesis?
The affective filter hypothesis.
This one emphasizes the role of emotions and attitudes in language learning. Factors like motivation, self-confidence, and anxiety can all affect your ability to acquire a new language.
A high level of anxiety can create a mental block that prevents you from processing comprehensible input.
So that's why it's so important to create a relaxed and supportive learning environment.
Exactly. A positive attitude and a willingness to take risks are essential for success. Krashen also argues that grammar study, while potentially valuable for general education, isn't the core of language acquisition. He believes that the best way to learn grammar is through exposure to comprehensible input.
So it's more about absorbing grammar naturally through reading and listening, rather than memorizing rules?
Precisely. And he emphasizes that the target language should be used as the medium of instruction whenever possible. This creates an immersive environment where students are constantly exposed to comprehensible input.
That makes a lot of sense. So, to summarize, what are the key takeaways for our listeners who are learning English?
Well, first, focus on getting lots of comprehensible input. Read books, watch movies, listen to podcasts, anything that you find interesting and that you can mostly understand. Don't worry about understanding every single word. Second, create a positive learning environment for yourself. Find ways to stay motivated and confident, and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
And third, don't get too hung up on grammar rules.
Focus on communicating and expressing yourself, and the grammar will come naturally over time.
Great advice, Mark. It sounds like language learning is more about creating the right environment and mindset than about memorizing endless rules. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
My pleasure, Jane. It was great being here.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode of English Matura with JB. Remember, everyone, language learning is a journey, not a destination. Embrace the process, enjoy the ride, and don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way. Until next time, happy learning.